Hey, what's up guys? Rob here with Aloha Android. I have a rant video today and it has to do with storage capacity on budget devices. And so just basically off the top, about a couple years ago, I made this prediction where I was figuring like by 2016, budget devices would be considered devices that had like 16 gigs of internal storage minimum and 2 gigs of RAM minimum. And now that we are in 216, we're actually 4 months into 216. 2016. Why did I say 216? 2016, basically. And still, there are still devices that's being released with only 8 gigabytes of internal storage and only 1 gig of RAM. And this really needs to change. To all the manufacturers out there, get your heads out of the clouds because 8 gigs is not cutting it anymore. Here's why. Okay. Applications today, they require a lot. They require a lot of space on your phone because they're more feature packed. So you have application that is going to keep growing over time. Also, Android operating system basically takes up a portion of that, which is something that a lot of people get confused about when they buy a phone. They hear 8 gigabytes of internal storage, and because they're trying to save some money, they figure that should be good enough to download applications, movies, etc. Until they actually, get familiar with their phone and they realize that the Android operating system takes up anywhere between 4 to 5 gigabytes of that internal storage already alone by itself. There's no separate internal storage for just the Android operating system and then an additional one for apps and everything else. They don't do that. Some devices have done that, but not every device has that built in. So you're looking at 8 gigs, about anywhere between 4 to 3.5 gigabytes available for the user to download apps, movies, music, and take pictures, etc. That's not enough. If you double that up with a micro SD card, you can move some of the apps to the SD card, but it doesn't move the whole application. It only moves a portion of it if you're not on Marshmallow. If you're on Marshmallow, there is an option to actually do adoptable storage, but that's a whole different thing. So 8 gigs and then 1 gig of RAM. 1 gig of RAM with so many things, running in background, so many tasks from all these apps that have these new packed-in features just eats up the RAM so much that you barely have any RAM left over if you don't clear your RAM. Now they say don't clear your RAM. Wasted RAM is, RAM not being used is wasted RAM. Okay, that may be fine and dandy when it comes to the whole computer world, but let's just get real. Honestly, with every smartphone that I've dealt with, when you only have let's say about 100 megabytes of RAM left over, your phone bogs down. It slows the heck down until you force close a bunch of apps, which frees up the RAM. And then say you have 1 gig of RAM, 900 plus megabytes of RAM, available. Well, not available, but total, and you free up 200, so it brings it down to where it's only 500 megabytes of RAM being used. Your phone starts to fly, it starts to move faster, it starts to process commands quicker. So I don't know where a lot of people are getting this crap from. If you don't use up all your RAM, you're wasting RAM. If you use up a lot of your RAM, you slow your phone down. End of point. But besides that, 1 gig of RAM is just not cutting it anymore because apps are so feature packed that they require a lot from the RAM. They require a lot of RAM for it to actually function in the background. So 8 gigs of internal storage is starting to be real crappy, especially when you have apps, like I said, that are so feature packed. For example, just for an example, how many of you guys actually remember how big Google Plus used to be in 2010? Do you guys remember that? How big it was when you downloaded the app from the Play Store at the time from the Android market? How big was it? You guys remember? I do. It was 7.5 megabytes. 7.5 megabytes. That's not very big. That you can download on LTE in 2 seconds. 7.5 megabytes. And you had Google Plus installed on your phone, which when it was installed, the actual size after being installed on your device was about 10, but I'd say 10.57 and some change megabytes. That's as big as it was when you installed it. Now when you download it, it's 30 plus megabytes. When you install it, it's 50 plus megabytes installed on your device. That's a huge jump from 2010. Same with Facebook. Facebook used to be only 9.8 megabytes downloaded in 2010. Now when you download it, it's like 40 plus megabytes to download it. When you install it, it's pretty much 200 megabytes of your internal storage taken from Facebook alone. So that tells you like apps are going to consistently keep growing. Manufacturers need to process this when they want to build some devices, because some devices that have lost out was like the Tribute 5. I think the Tribute 5 would have been a heck of a badass phone if it had 16 gigs of internal storage and like 2 gigs of RAM. I mean, it's twin on Metro PCS. The K7 has 1.5 gigs of RAM, and it functions just fine with only 8 gigs of internal storage. But still, installing apps, using apps and stuff like that, it's hard to do with just only 8 gigs. I used to make it work back in the day. If you were able to root your phone, you could make it work by using link to SD and throwing all your apps on your second partition of your SD card, and that would actually alleviate the problem. And that's what I used to do to get by with 8 gigs of internal storage and make a phone that only had 8 gigs of internal storage usable. That's what I rooted them for. But nowadays, bootloaders are being locked down. You can't obtain root. If you root your device, you're forfeiting getting updates in the future. So it's like you got to choose between one and another. Do you want to use link to SD and move your apps to the SD card, or do you want to actually be able to update your phone in the future if it's going to get an Android update? So to me, I think that manufacturers should move up minimum 16 gigabytes of internal storage, minimum 2 gigs of RAM on budget low-end smartphones, and then go from there. Mid-tier devices can pop 32 gigs because we're already looking at devices that have 64 and 128 gigabytes of internal storage right out the box. So 16 low end, 32 mid tier, 2 gigs low end, 3 gigs mid tier. I think that's where they should go with this and do away with 8 gigs of internal storage, because this is not helping anyone today. So if you guys have anything else you guys want to add to this rant, do so in the comment section of this video. Drop a thumbs up if you guys liked it. Don't forget to click that subscribe button on the mobile app. It's that way. My name is Rob with Aloha Android. Thanks for checking out this rant for today, and I'll see you guys next time.